The US has carried out military strikes in Syria. Again, this shouldn't surprise you. Just because there's a new president in the White House didn't mean anything was going to change. As a matter of fact, Biden being in the White House, it was under an Obama-Biden administration that the US proxy war against Syria started. This is from the U.S. Department of Defense. This is their official statement from February 25th, 2021. U.S. conducts defensive precision strike. At President Biden's direction, U.S. military forces earlier this evening conducted airstrikes against infrastructure utilized by Iranian-backed militant groups in eastern Syria. These strikes were authorized in response to recent attacks against American and coalition personnel in Iraq and to ongoing threats to those personnel. Defensive strikes thousands of miles from U.S. shores in defense of American forces illegally occupying both Syria and Iraq. The Iraqi government told the U.S. to leave. They refused to leave. They are illegally occupying that country. And what does this say about Biden's alleged desire to return to the Iran nuclear deal? The entire point of the U.S. fighting this proxy war against Syria, its continued presence in Iraq, is to undermine Iran for eventual regime change there. The nuclear deal was always a ploy. It was always a way for the U.S. to appear to be reasonable and to appear to be seeking peace, when the entire time they were destroying Iran's neighbors, its allies, in an eventual lead up to destroying Iran itself. They were going to sabotage the Iran nuclear deal, blame it on the Iranians, and then use that as a pretext to pursue pressure and aggression against Iran itself. So again, this is something that's been going on for years. It's in the policy papers put together by the unelected special interests that actually drive U.S. foreign policy, regardless of who's in the White House. People are saying, well, look, Biden's already, waging war. Well, it's just a continuation of what happened under Trump. Trump carried out strikes on Syria during his presidency. And of course, this entire war started under the Obama-Biden administration. So again, it is the war machine. It is continuing. The goal is regime change in Iran. Forget what rhetoric is coming out of the White House. That's where all of this is leading. Those forces that the U.S. just carried out a defensive strike against, those are the forces that helped push ISIS and Al-Qaeda out of the region. They're the ones keeping them from coming back, not the U.S., not the U.S. presence. It was those Iranian-backed militias, it was Russia, it was the Syrian Arab army, it was the military forces in Iraq that helped eradicate that threat, not the U.S. The U.S. created it, used it as a proxy against its enemies in the region. It pretended to fight them. It pretended to fight them for an entire year until Russia intervened in 2015. When Russia started to strike the supply lines leading out of NATO territory in Turkey, that's when the fighting capacity of these groups started to collapse. Don't harbor any false hopes that this new administration is going to change U.S. foreign policy. The goal always has been and will continue to be regime change in Tehran. One last thing. We see Israel fixing all of its ties with its, its supposed Arab enemies. They were never enemies. That was always for show. They are all client regimes of the U.S. They all work together. They have their own song and dance that they have to put on for their respective populations. But at the end of the day, we saw how these Arab nations, Israel, Turkey, they were all working together to attack and undermine Syria. They had no qualms about working together on that project. They will have no qualms about working together against Iran, and that's where this is all leading. So we'll keep an eye on it. If you thought the video was useful, please like and share it. Think about subscribing. It's free to do and it helps the channel grow. Check the video description for this Department of Defense statement, as well as for ways you can help support my work, like by becoming a Patreon member. And as always, thank you for watching.